The first time I realized I was in trouble, I was 17 years old and he was standing in my kitchen wearing my brother's varsity jacket. It shouldn't have mattered. Eli was just my brother's best friend, a fixture in our house since we were kids, all scuffed sneakers and sarcastic grins. But that night, something was different. Maybe it was the way the dim kitchen light caught the sharp angle of his jaw, or how his fingers lingered when he handed me a soda, brushing my palm in a way that didn't feel accidental. I swallowed hard and looked away. "You good, Calloway?" he asked, voice low. I wasn't. Because suddenly, I was noticing things I'd never let myself notice before, the way his thumb tapped against the counter, restless, the faint scar above his eyebrow from a childhood bike crash, the quiet intensity in his eyes when he looked at me like he was waiting for something. My brother's laugh echoed from the living room, and Eli smirked, leaning in just enough that his shoulder bumped mine. "You're staring." I wasn't supposed to be. But I couldn't stop. And that asterisk was the problem that I grew up in a town where nothing changed. Maple Ridge was the kind of place where the diner still served milkshakes in frosted glass cups, where the same families had owned the same houses for generations, and where everyone knew your business before you did. My last name, Calloway, meant something here. My grandfather had been mayor. My father coached Little League. My brother, Drew, was the golden boy, the star quarterback who'd led our high school to state finals 2 years running. And me? I was just Jamie. The quiet one. The one who spent more time in the library than at parties, who preferred the worn-out piano in our sunroom to the roar of Friday night football games. Then there was Eli. Eli Walsh had been Drew's shadow since 2nd grade, when he'd moved here after his mom died and his dad started working the night shift at the auto plant. He showed up to school the first day with a black eye and a chip on his shoulder, and Drew, being Drew, had marched right up to him and asked if he wanted to play tag. Just like that, Eli became part of the family. He ate at our table more nights than not, crashed in our guest room when his dad was on a bender, and laughed at my dumb jokes even when no one else did. I used to think I knew him as well as I knew the creak of the third stair in our hallway or the smell of rain on hot pavement. But that was before. Before I noticed how his voice softened when he talked to me, how he always remembered I hated pickles on my burgers, how his gaze lingered on me sometimes when he thought I wasn't looking. The worst part? I liked it. And I hated myself for liking it. Because Eli wasn't mine to want. He was Drew's best friend. He was the guy who ruffled my hair and called me kid even though I was only a year younger. He was the one who'd sit on the porch with me after everyone else had gone to bed, passing a bag of sour candy back and forth while I rambled about books and he hummed along to songs I couldn't name. It was easy, then, to ignore the way my pulse jumped when his knee brushed mine. To pretend I didn't notice how his t-shirt stretched across his shoulders or how his laugh made something warm curl in my chest. But that night in the kitchen, something shifted. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. Maybe it was the way my skin burned where he'd touched me, just for a second. Or maybe it was the way he'd said my name, Calloway like it was a secret, instead of kid like usual. Whatever it was, it terrified me. Because wanting him meant risking everything. My brother, my family, the fragile peace I'd built in this town where people whispered about the Carters' divorce for years and never forgot that time the Mitchell boy got caught with another guy behind the bleachers. So I did what I did best. I pretended nothing had changed. But when Eli smiled at me the next morning, sleepy-eyed and rumpled from crashing on our couch, his foot nudging mine under the breakfast table, I knew I was lying to myself. And I had no idea how to stop. The next few weeks passed in a haze of stolen glances and half-finished sentences. Eli became a constant presence at our house, more than usual, always finding excuses to linger after Drew left the room. He'd lean against the counter while I washed dishes, his shoulder inches from mine, the scent of his cheap cologne mixing with the lemon soap. He'd ask me about my college applications with a focus he'd never shown before, his fingers tapping restlessly against his thigh like he was nervous. And the touching. God, the touching. It was always small things, a hand on my back as he passed behind me in the hallway, his knee pressing against mine under the dinner table, his thumb brushing my wrist when I handed him a soda. Each touch burned, and each time, I'd pull away like I'd been shocked, only to catch him watching me with that unreadable expression, like he was waiting for me to do something. The worst part was Drew didn't seem to notice. He'd clap Eli on the back and joke about how he was practically living with us now, completely oblivious to the way Eli's eyes tracked me across the room or how his voice dropped an octave when he spoke to me. Then came the night of the bonfire. It was a senior tradition, a final hurrah before graduation, held out at Miller's Pond. Drew dragged us both along, already buzzed and slinging an arm around Eli's shoulders. "Lighten up, Jamie," he'd laughed when he saw my expression. "You're gonna miss this when you're stuck in some library at Yale." I hadn't told anyone I'd deferred my acceptance. The fire roared, casting flickering shadows across Eli's face as he sat across from me, a beer dangling from his fingers. He wasn't drinking it. Just watching me over the rim, his gaze intense even from a distance. Someone shoved a red plastic cup into my hand. "Drink up, Calloway." I took a sip and grimaced, cheap vodka mixed with something sickly sweet. Eli smirked, like he knew I hated it, and raised his own cup in a silent toast before downing it in one go. The heat of the fire, the press of bodies, the way Eli's Adam's apple bobbed as he swallowed, it was too much. I stood abruptly, muttering something about needing air, and stumbled toward the trees. I didn't hear him follow. But then his voice was there, close behind me. "Running away again?" I turned. He was closer than I expected, close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his green eyes, the way his bottom lip was slightly chapped. My breath hitched. "I'm not running," I lied. He stepped forward. The moonlight caught the sharp line of his jaw. Could have fooled me. We stood there, the sounds of the party distant, the space between us charged with something I didn't dare name. His fingers twitched at his sides like he wanted to reach for me. Then, "Jamie? Eli?" Drew's voice cut through the night. We sprang apart like we'd been caught doing something wrong. Drew emerged from the trees, frowning. "There you are. We're heading out." His gaze flicked between us. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Eli said, too quickly. Drew shrugged, already turning away. "Cool. Let's go." As we followed him back to the car, Eli's hand brushed mine, just once, fleeting, before he shoved both hands deep in his pockets. And I realized with a sinking certainty, this was going to ruin us. But I didn't know how to stop. The rain started just as Eli's truck pulled into our driveway. I'd been waiting on the porch swing, knees pulled to my chest, watching the storm clouds roll in. Drew was at a college visit, Dad was working late, and Mom had taken my sister to ballet, which meant the house was empty. Which meant Eli and I were alone. He cut the engine but didn't get out. Just sat there, gripping the steering wheel, his silhouette blurred by the downpour. I counted the seconds, 1, 2, 3, before his door finally swung open. He didn't run for cover. Just walked through the rain like he didn't feel it, his white t-shirt going translucent against his skin. My throat went dry. "Hey," he said when he reached the porch. Water dripped from his hair, his lashes. "Hey." My voice cracked. Silence. The kind that hummed. Then, "You avoiding me?" He tilted his head, studying me the way he used to study plays on the football field, like he was trying to predict my next move. I swallowed. "No. Liar." A half smile, but his eyes were serious. The rain drummed against the roof, loud enough to drown out my heartbeat. I could smell the petrichor, the faint scent of his soap. Could see the way his chest rose and fell just a little too fast. He took a step closer. "Jamie. We can't." The words tore out of me, raw. "Drew, your dad, everyone." "I know." His jaw tightened. "Believe me, I fucking know." Another step. Now he was close enough that I could see the freckle under his left eye, the way his pulse jumped in his throat. "Then why?" I whispered. He exhaled, ragged. "Because I can't stop thinking about you." The confession hung between us, fragile as the spiderweb glistening in the corner of the porch. I should have pushed him away. Should have laughed it off, pretended he was joking. Instead, I reached for him. My fingers trembled as they brushed his wrist. His skin was cold from the rain, but where we touched, it burned. His breath hitched. "Calloway." And then I kissed him. Or maybe he kissed me. It didn't matter. All that mattered was the way his hands cradled my face like I was something precious, the way he tasted like rain and spearmint gum, the way he whispered finally against my lips like he'd been waiting forever. We broke apart, gasping. His forehead pressed to mine, his thumbs tracing my cheekbones. Now what? I asked. He smiled, soft, real, and kissed me again. Now we figure it out. The first few weeks were the hardest. We didn't tell Drew. Not yet. Eli would show up for Sunday dinners like nothing had changed, laughing too loud at my brother's jokes while his sneaker hooked around my ankle under the table. I'd pass him the mashed potatoes, our fingers brushing just a second too long, and my mother would smile like she thought it was sweet how close we'd become. Nobody knew. Nobody except us. And that secret, us, became its own kind of language. A shared glance across the room, Eli's thumb swiping syrup from my lip when no one was looking, the way he'd press his knee against mine during movie nights until I had to bite my own cheek to keep from smiling. It wasn't perfect. Some nights, Eli would get quiet, staring at his phone when his dad called for the third time that week. Other nights, it was me who panicked, pulling away when he reached for me because I remembered the way Mrs. Carter had looked at Tommy Mitchell when she caught him holding hands with Ryan Jacobs behind the bleachers last spring. But then Eli would find me, on the porch, in the kitchen, at the far end of the football field where no one ever went, and he'd kiss me like he was trying to memorize the shape of my mouth. And for a little while, nothing else mattered. The night before I left for Yale, we drove out to Miller's Pond. No bonfire this time. Just us, an old blanket, and the stars reflecting off the water like scattered pieces of glass. Eli lay on his back, one arm tucked behind his head, the other tracing idle patterns on my wrist where I sat beside him. "You nervous?" he asked. I thought about the acceptance letter I'd almost declined. The dorm room waiting for me 800 miles away. The way Eli's voice had cracked when he'd said, "You have to go," after I told him I'd considered staying. Terrified, I admitted. His fingers stilled. "Me too." I turned my hand over, lacing our fingers together. His palm was warm and rough against mine. We didn't talk about the distance. Didn't talk about Drew, or his dad, or what people would say if they knew. We just lay there in the quiet, listening to the crickets and the water lapping at the shore. After a while, Eli sat up and pulled something from his pocket, a worn-out copy of the Odyssey, the one we'd read together in sophomore lit. He dog-eared a page near the middle. "Come then, put away your sword in its sheath, and let us two go up into my bed so that, lying together in love, we may then have faith in one another." I looked up at him. He was already watching me, his eyes soft in the moonlight. "You're not getting rid of me that easy, Calloway." I kissed him then, slow and sweet, pouring every unsaid thing into it. The fear, the hope, the "I love you" neither of us was brave enough to say out loud yet. When we pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. And for the first time, the future didn't seem so scary.